So first of all, thank you for joining us and taking the time to hop on this afternoon. Um, our aim during this webinar is to be a resource to you guys as coaches because we know that this time is uniquely difficult and challenging and disrupted in the case of daily life, and this extends to college recruiting. So we want to be a resource for you guys. We are not the experts or the be-all end-all in terms of saying what's what with NCAA rulings or disruptions or certainly COVID-19, but we have compiled some resources from across our networks, travel coaches, high school coaches, college coaches, NCAA folks, to really compile something to be a resource for you guys. We're going to dip in and out of this PowerPoint to some of those resources on the internet as well. And then when we post this, we'll accompany this, this video with some of those resources as well. So first let's kind of talk about who we're going to be meeting today. Matt, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for coming on here. Given the circumstances with us working from home, we may have a friendly guest, my dog, that's going to come in and bark. And so if you hear that, I'll try to mute myself the best that I can. But, these are unprecedented times for sure. And what we want to do is be able to provide you guys, because a lot of this is us talking with you and hearing what you guys are doing and some really good resources. We are just trying to centralize it so you can then have and take what you want, be able to share those with families. So for those that don't know me, my name is Matt Sternberg. I am the Director of Business Development for Head First Honorable Camps and Top 96. I've been with Head First for over 5 years, and Max and I have, been together a while and being able to do a lot of these. The biggest thing that I'm able to do and that I enjoy doing is talking with families and really, putting families at ease as they're trying to navigate through the challenging recruiting process. A lot of what I do is actually working with travel coaches, summer coaches, folks that are experts in this space. And it's been, a real pleasure. I see a lot of folks that I am in touch with on this. So appreciate you guys being here, and hopefully this can be pretty informative for you.
Awesome. And as Matt mentioned, I am Max. I'm Max McKenna. I'm our Senior Manager of Marketing for both of our showcase divisions, which you see the logos of in the top corner, and which we'll kind of talk through towards the end of this just to lay out some of the options for summer scheduling. I played baseball at the college level, played at Amherst, graduated in 2011, went into once upon a lifetime ago, was a teacher and baseball coach myself in a couple private schools, and have also coached some summer travel, both with Head First and some other organizations, and have been back with Head First now full time. I guess it's 5 or 6 years now, and have been hands-on in this division and this program in particular, and love every day of it and love connecting with travel coaches like you guys, as well as, no offense, maybe more importantly, your student athletes as well in the programs that we run. To start off, we want to kind of talk through what student athletes can do right now. And we've focused a lot of content recently on our blog on this. We did a 3-part series last week about what the recruiting changes mean, what a dead period means, what you can still do, the tips and tricks that student athletes can be using right now to continue to advance their recruiting, and then some of those other things that players really can focus on even while it is a dead period and while their seasons are suspended and while their target program seasons are suspended. So in general, the top priority is stay healthy. This is something that, I am certainly no expert on COVID-19. We look to the CDC and state and federal officials for all that sort of thing. But I think it's really important that student athletes stay healthy and coaches, you guys stay healthy, so that you can keep making these strides. That being said, there's a lot of things that student athletes can still be doing right now to advance their recruiting. So it's really, really important that they not put a pause on recruiting efforts or development or emailing coaches or anything else like that, just because they feel like their day-to-day life has been disrupted and they hear the word NCAA dead period and they say, okay, I guess there's nothing that I can do. What we're going to touch on for student athletes, especially over the course of this, is a really key word right now is being proactive and keeping their feet moving. It's really, really important that student athletes keep doing everything that they can right now so that they come out of this unexpected dead period ahead of where they went into it. If they don't continue to do something, then they won't come out ahead, and then they will end up, depending on how the summer looks from a recruiting standpoint, which we'll talk about, they could end up being a little bit behind the eight ball for these classes of 2021 and 2022 especially. So stay healthy so that they can keep working on that. The other thing is continuing home workouts for physical development can be really challenging in terms of student athletes having the self-discipline, or they feel constrained by the resources that they don't have. But there's this really interesting article on Vanderbilt athletics that I was reading that I'm gonna pull up now, that Tim Corbin says there are a lot of primitive things. There's a lot of things you can do with your body if you move it outside and you get some creativity. For my money, if Vanderbilt baseball, the defending national champions, are able to think that way and can you do these quote unquote primitive things, body weight stuff, just staying active, working on fundamentals. If they can do that, then it also can be good enough for student athletes at the high school level as well. And so just keeping their feet moving on recruiting, certainly, but also on the physical development, on the skill development. If they can't get outside to a batting tunnel, can they get a screen? Can they set up a tarp in the garage to do tee work? Can they play wall ball in their living room if it won't drive their parents absolutely bonkers, and work on their backhand technique or something like that? And we'll talk about some other resources that you guys can pull on to help your student athletes in this regard. Next up, another thing that student athletes need to focus on during this time is academics. It's really tough, and I know that I feel this, I'm sure Matt feels this, I'm sure many of you who are on this call feel this. It can be really tough to transition from an in-person office or classroom, in our student athletes' cases, to working remotely or to existing in a digital classroom. Transitioning to distance learning is not easy, but I believe that student athletes can set up a structure and strategies to help them succeed in this different paradigm so that they maintain some of their habits, because as much as classrooms and schools and the school year has been disrupted, these grades are still going to go on their transcripts, and they are still going to be submitted to college coaches who are recruiting them and to college admissions offices. So it's really important. I mean, that seems obvious to say, but it's important to remind student athletes of that so that they can start to build those healthy habits, so that they can keep their foot on the gas in the classroom, whether it's in person when we get back to that, or digitally with remote learning. The other side of things here is this is a really good time to dedicate resources to SAT, ACT prep, because for better or for worse, this is a really important benchmark for college coaches who are recruiting. And I'm going to just highlight one resource that we use quite a bit and a partner that we work with before turning over to Matt to talk a little bit about this. Compass Education Group. This is a former honor roll father who founded this company. They have concrete brick and mortar offices in parts of the country. They also do remote tutoring, and they do digital tutoring. Right now it's all digital tutoring, as you might imagine, but they specifically have updates on the impact of COVID-19 on testing dates, cancellations, reschedulings. The changes to the AP exam are happening, you see right there. So this is a resource that I would certainly pass along to you guys so that you can be informed for student athletes as well. Matt, anything to add there on the standardized testing front?
Certainly on that, and just to back up quickly, which has an overarching effect, I think right now it's very easy to stand still and to be complacent in where you are in the entire process. I know it is for me. I mean, I'm a very routine-oriented guy. I know you are too, Max, and it's tough when all of a sudden, like, that's just ripped from under you. So it's on us. It's on us as adults to be able to work with the people that trust us, with our student athletes, with parents, to be able to say, develop a new routine. And I think that can have an effect on, sure, your workouts, your academics, on your SAT, but look at what you're able to do now that maybe you didn't have the time to be able to do previously, which I think is important. So, coaches, and we'll talk about this, they're going to understand that things, that, everybody's going to be on a level playing field. They're not going to be kind of coming out of the gates the same. But I do think it's important that there's still no excuses. There's no, if you can do something at home, then you should be able to do that and do it really well. On the SAT and the ACT, that's a perfect example. Right now, where kids are not out of their house for 12, maybe 13 hours a day, there's a little bit more time to be able to fit that in. So even a little bit earlier for them to be able to use the resources that are online, free resources, Compass, others that are out there, to be able to really work and prepare themselves for when that next test date is, or even at a younger age, start to see what some of these questions are. I think those are the things that you're able to do from your computer, that you're able to really go and, like you said, keep your foot on the gas, maybe even more so than necessary.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on that, and also to build it into this recruiting standpoint, one thing that we focus on in times like this is obstacles open up opportunity, right? The obstacle's the way. Yes, it is crushing to see a high school season, a travel season, a college season for these student athletes disappear. Looking at that from the flip side, there are opportunities that this does open up for additional time for your test prep, for the fact that now there's Division 1, 2, 3 NAIA JUCO colleges all across the country where coaches have an obscene amount of time in front of their computer because their seasons were canceled. So using this to create opportunities in a different way, or differently shaped opportunities, is a kind of the mindset and the mindset shift that I would encourage student athletes to look at this with. And when that comes to recruiting, right now you have, as a student athlete, a lot of opportunity to do some things that otherwise would be really, really tough. For spring sports in particular, you're so taken up with your sport in this season that then when you head into the summer exposure season, you're trying to do a bunch of different things at once. You're trying to email coaches for the first time in June, maybe. You're trying to build your list of schools while you are also trying to get the requisite and proper exposure. So spring sports are great. I played one. Matt played one. We love them. But this opens up time during a time of the year when previously for student athletes during a typical year, it'd be really tough for them to do some of these things. Now they have the time and the opportunity to do this. Starting with school list research. We believe that the college search has to be around holistic fit. And so it's going to require a lot of research and dedicating hours to learning about schools. One resource that we put up last week is this, our part 2 on recruiting impacts and updates, tips and tactics for baseball recruiting during this NCAA dead period. And one of the things in here is build your college list, right? Research the schools in depth, get a sense of your admissibility, get a sense of what the qualities at a school that you're looking at and how they might fit. One thing and one bias that I think we see from student athletes a lot is kind of label-driven list building, where you're like, I'm a Division I guy, I'm an ACC guy, I'm an Ivy League guy, which if you actually break it down to these different schools, there's very little that Dartmouth has in common with Cornell, has in common with Columbia, other than this kind of Ivy League label. So as student athletes build out this list, and with this additional time that they have to do so, they can start to think about qualities. What's the size of the school that I'm looking for? How far away from home is it? Is it in a city? Is it 3 hours outside of a city? Is it in Iowa? Is it in Southern California? Think about these qualities and then researching schools that fit that type of school. So rather than starting with Ivy League and saying, I have to therefore like Dartmouth and Cornell, even though they're incredibly different, say, I'm looking at a school that's mid-sized, 3,000 to 7,000, has a focus on engineering, is in a city, and then I can start to say, great, the schools that fit that are MIT, XYZ.
And Max, I think one of the things that you're able to do is really use the internet to your advantage, because a lot of these colleges, and there's websites that'll take you there, you can do a lot of virtual tours on there. So there's no reason, because we say, your next stop is over the summer, go and see what a school that looks like NYU, which is very, very different than Cornell. Make sure that you're seeing what those differences are. Now, it's not the same, and you're still going to need to get there, but I do think being able to utilize the tools that you have in front of you are going to be really important to do. And that's one example of what you're able to do when it comes to, looking at the right fit with a particular school.
Absolutely. I actually saw this, quick diversion. I actually saw this on social media the other day. There are coaches who are pushing their official visits. Official visits, unofficial visits, all got completely clipped. No face-to-face recruiting. But as we'll touch on next, the coaches can still have digital touch points with student athletes. And so one thing that some coaches have been doing that I've seen is they're doing FaceTime tours of campus. They're taking these official visits and transitioning them to a Zoom call or to a FaceTime or something like that. So using all these resources, there's a lot of things that players can be doing and that coaches, quite frankly, can be doing, college coaches can be doing to move some of their recruiting efforts to digital platforms as well. Which brings us right into the other thing that student athletes can and I believe should do during this dead period is be in contact with their target school coaches. These coaches can't see you face to face. You can't visit them on campus. They can't go see you at a tournament, but you can call them, you can text them if you're on that level of relationship with them, you can email them, you can reach out to them through these digital platforms to really start to make that first level of contact. And one question that came in already that relates to this is, has the NCAA lifted or changed any restrictions on coaches reaching out to sophomores prior to the start of their junior year? The answer to this is no. The key here is coaches can have digital access with age-eligible student athletes at the high school level, which right now is the class of 2020, who have largely wrapped up their recruiting process, and 2021. So they can't be in personal touch with 2022s, 2023s, but that doesn't stop these 2022s, 2023s, these younger student athletes from being in touch with coaches. They can still send that email. They can still put them in touch with their sports recruits profile or send them their video or their transcript. It just dictates what the coach can send back, right? So what that player will get back from a coach at a Division I school, if they haven't passed September 1st of their junior year, what they will get back is a pretty form letter that will say, thank you for your touch, thank you for reaching out. Please fill out our recruiting questionnaire, which they should also do. Here's a list of our recruiting camps next fall. We'd love to see you there. Full stop. It's going to be a form letter that they've copy and pasted, but that doesn't need to stop student athletes from reaching out to coaches. The other thing here is that very unique to baseball is the phone call loophole where, going through an intermediary like you guys as their coaches or something like that, if a student athletes pick up the phone and call a coach's office and the coach picks up the phone, they can discuss all sorts of things, no matter what age they are. And that's where we've seen a lot of, these quote unquote young commits or early commits tend to happen is through this phone call loophole, quite frankly. That is also a place where travel coaches and mentors and advisors can play a role in helping organize some of that. But also it's a reason that a high school student athlete can call the office and see if a coach answers and start to pursue some of that. I do think that it's important that the first contact with these schools be email, be digital, so that it's or a handwritten letter if you're feeling a little old school, so that it's not just, hey coach, my name's Max McKenna, I really want to go to Amherst College, and like, great, I haven't seen your video, I don't know your transcript, I don't know where you're from. Give them a baseline of information about yourself before you make some of these more overt touch points, such as calling the office, is what I would say.
And Max, I think what's important to that point is you're going to catch a lot of coaches that are around. They are, more so now, obviously, that they're not on the road. So having a really nice plan to be able to do this segmented from March, till the summer gives you, and it makes you look organized. And I think being able to have that for your student athletes to be able to help them be able to reach out, it's brand new territory, because typically you're going to have coaches that are on the road, and whether it's recruiting or at their own, with their own teams, now you're going to potentially have them in front of the computer 80% more of the time than they normally would in the spring.
Absolutely. And really, and can't emphasize that enough. I mean, I sat down and interviewed over a Zoom call Chris Gordon from Duke yesterday, and the man has so much time in front of his computer. He's watching video. I think he's going to start running MLB The Show video game simulations just so he can get some of that data perspective that he really needs. But he has so much time that he usually doesn't have at this time of the year. And so they are transitioning some of the things that they're doing. And which brings us to our next point, which is starting or updating an online profile and updating your video is something that can be really important. We've partnered this year with Sports Recruits, which is a website that this is my free profile. Feel free to, taking my information. This is a way where coaches are in front of their computer, and Sports Recruits, we did a call with them on Wednesday with their founder and CEO, and he was saying that the traffic on their website was up 100% over what it had ever been anytime between now and last October. It's a really key time that coaches are moving a lot of their efforts to digital means. They're looking at video when you send it in. They are looking at profiles to get your academic information, etc. So focusing on this right now can really help because you're delivering it to coaches at a time when they have more time in front of the computer. And so you really can keep making strides, but thinking, okay, what are the efficiencies I can gain by having all of my up-to-date information live in a single place instead of sending an email with 6 different attachments to Coach Decker at Harvard and then 12 different attachments to Coach Hager at Cornell because they wanted something else. Having it all live in one place can be really helpful, and also the most up-to-date video. Video might be tough during this time, but having video on your profile will help increase the views. Because the Sports Recruits algorithm, just like the Facebook algorithm, will serve video to the top of the feed for coaches quite often. But also, that's what coaches want to see, right? They want to get a sense of you on paper, and they want to see your headshot, your transcript, but ultimately they want to assess you as a player. So, and they can get a decent sense of that from video before they're able to see you in person. So updating that video whenever possible, or even if it's old video, having that up on student athletes' profiles can really help them make some strides in the recruiting process with college coaches as well. Next up is, what can coaches do? What can you guys do? And there are 3 really important things that we're kind of going to touch on here. The first thing you see there is be a resource. There's all sorts of stuff coming out right now about what are the workouts, indoor workouts, creative ideas for indoor workouts for physical development, for baseball specific. Here's drills you can do. Here's information about the recruiting process or the college season. There's all sorts of stuff out there. You guys being an effective filter to some degree for your players to give them information that you know is good and that you believe to be actionable for them can be a really good thing that you guys can do right now, so that they aren't left just, drowning in this pool of information, not knowing if this tweet about what the NCAA is going to do next is real, or if it might be bogus, or if it's just based on partial information or interpretation. Being a resource for them that can help filter the sources by doing something like a weekly digest or a bi-weekly digest says, hey guys, here's one article about recruiting that we would send out. Here's one video of a bodyweight workout that we think would really work for pitchers. Here's some band work that's new that Jager just put up. Like, being a resource for them and distributing and disseminating some of this information to them, I think can be a really good way for you to just help them sift through all this information that they're getting right now. More time in front of the computer means...
Max,
yeah.
One point to that is, I think what we're seeing a lot is a lot of families that are craving information, but at the same time, they feel overloaded because anybody that has a computer and they pull up their social media or they get notifications are seeing that directly. And I think, to the point is, you guys as travel coaches, as high school coaches, are the trusted source. And I think what we're seeing from our friends, our partners, is really good stuff that's out there on Instagram, on Facebook, direct email. And I think being able for coaches to be able to ask their colleagues, be able to pull from them, pull some stuff online, you can be that central source that is ever so needed right now, where it is information overload, but at the same time does need to be out there. It does need these people, these players, these families, they need that guidance, and they need to continue to stay upon their workouts or the academic side or the right fits and finding the colleges. That's where we feel as though it could be a really, really helpful tool for you guys, because that's who's listening is your student athletes, is your players.
1000%. And I think that, the double-edged sword of more time in front of the computer is that, yes, these students are going to have the chance to, your players are going to have the chance to do more research on schools and dedicate their time to SAT and ACT prep, but also they're looking at all the social media, the articles, all the stuff as it comes out, and they don't have the same filter that you guys would have. And so helping them sift through that is even more important, just because they're going to be getting such an inundation of it right now. The other resource, and this isn't new or different or unique to this particular current set of current events, but assisting in the school selection process and college coach communication is a really key thing that right now, previously, high school coaches, travel coaches would be working very hands-on with players on the field. Replacing that with, okay, let's set up some time and talk through what's in your college list or what you're looking for in a college experience. Or maybe I have the time because I'm not at practice for 8 hours a day. Maybe I have the time to write up a template email for my kids to send to college coaches, or edit some of their emails that they are about to send off to their target schools. Like being a resource in that way, and specifically in the recruiting process, is also something that can be really important. The other thing here is I think that coaches can be a really positive digital presence. As we said, like there's workouts and drills up the wazoo about all sorts of things, some great, some not so great, and a lot of things in between. But if coach, if you've been thinking about having a drill focused Instagram account for your program, now's a great time to do it, because your players are looking for it, and you might have the resources or time to be able to do that now that previously you didn't. So creating a digital presence of workouts and drills for your guys, whether that's email, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever the case, band if you use like some team communication platform, just using that effectively and pushing that stuff out there, I think can be really helpful. The other thing, and this was a point that Matt brought up as we were talking about this, is team bonding and culture. The transition to a digital classroom while seasons are being canceled, while we're supposed to be, socially distancing, can be really, really tough on kids. It's really tough on me sometimes to be away from our head first team so much. And we're scheduling Zoom conference calls with our whole company just so we can see each other's faces and have that kind of team bonding and cultural experience. So doing something like that with your team could be really, really helpful. And really help build team culture. They are looking for that. They need that. Whether it's small group, whole team, one-on-one check-ins with players, just checking in with players to see how they are doing during this time. Yes, most of them are going to be at home with their parents or guardians, so they have a resource that us as theoretically independent adults might not. But they're still looking for that connection. And so being able to deliver that to them on a different platform with something like FaceTime or Zoom or GoToWebinar or whatever the case may be, I think can be really helpful and needed for them during this time. Matt, anything to tag on there?
I think we just, as you guys know better than anyone else, I mean, these are 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids that, I mean, nobody's ever really dealt with anything like this before. They're certainly probably struggling more than most. I mean, I know that not being able to go in and interact with, my work colleagues is tough for me, but video has been really, really helpful in order to do that. And I think this is where a lot of teams and organizations can get ahead of this, because they can have that interaction now that there is so many great resources like Zoom, where you can have 30 people on one. And, even just having that and, tell me what you did today, or joking around, or having, some sort of rhythm or cadence to that will have something, it'll allow them to have something to look forward to. And I think that's a really valuable and big tool that we're going to see moving forward in this day and age. So.
Yeah, and I think that, what just occurred to me as well is that, this is now a really important skill set. So even if, yes, it's going to have great impact on your team culture, also it's something that kids are going to need to get used to as they move into college and into the workforce. Like this is a skill set that they're going to need. So helping them build that can be really helpful. Also, what I don't want coaches to necessarily think they have to do is you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? There are a lot of resources out there that you might have access to or can gain access to. One example of this is the ABCA video archive, where it has drill and skill work resources. What I have up here is a talk from this past ABCA down in Nashville this January with Salmon Candela, who's a travel coach at the high school level, and Spencer Allen, the head coach at Northwestern. And they're focused on pregame practice and how to use that effectively. But also what they touch on is, because it's a pregame practice, they are not saying you need access to a whole field. There's a whole section of this talk in particular that is dedicated to what can I do with my team or with a group of my team in a small confined space in a parking lot or in just a bullpen or just in this little patch of dirt. What can I do with them? So there are resources out there about not just the drill and skill work that players of this age can be doing in general, but also specifically with limited resources, with limited time, space. Like, what are the things that you can do? And so looking to these sorts of resources, whether it's great coaches on YouTube or on Instagram, looking at Tucker Frawley, the former former associate head coach at Yale, who's now in the Twins organization, he does some Instagram drill work or some Twitter drill work that might be helpful to look at. Like pulling on these digital resources, I think can be really helpful. And then the other thing here is, just as your players need some of this contact and this inspiration and all this, this is a really good time for you guys. Coaches, you're so busy. I know there's so much going on with meetings with players and with parents and running, whole organizations versus individual teams, all of it. And right now, let's not forget about taking care of yourselves either. Using this as a time to find some inspiration, some professional development opportunity through some of these resources can really help, you guys advance, quite frankly, in the next few months as well. And so I don't want to lose sight of that just because you are also trying to help your players through this difficult time. Let's not forget about the coach community and who can you reach out to or ask your network for a new drill or a new resource that they might be looking at. Let's start to build this and reinforce this network so that coaches can really look to each other during this time. As competitive as you'll be in the summer at a perfect game event, let's think about how can we collaborate right now to have the best outcomes for all of our organizations, certainly, financially tough times, but also for our student athletes in their development and in their recruiting process too.
It's a good way to be able to change the tune a little bit. I'm sure you guys are here, having the same questions that we're getting from our families, which is the uncertainty and what's going to happen. This provides and allows for content to go out to have some sort of ease over parents that are just naturally a little high strung, which is in our field, which is okay. And I think being able to develop this cadence, to be able to develop that structure is something that they need as well as their kids, and we'll change the tune a little bit in a positive way. So that's what we're seeing by doing things like this and other things that you've done, Max. And we're hoping that there will be that new norm that eventually gets out there.
Absolutely. And in kind of this vein, not to put too much of a microscope on BBA or AB, but this is AB. Thank you for being on the call, first of all. But also, this is an example of what we've seen some coaches in our network doing, right? Taking to social media, taking to the program Instagram page to show here's our throwing progression. Just a reminder, you don't need Andy Bradley to be taking you through this. This is something that you can and should be doing on your own, players of all ages. I think that this is a good way to push this sort of stuff out to your families, but also it's a great way to engage with them and helping say, share this on your Instagram, getting this back and forth with players and with families during this time can really help build trust in your organization as a whole, as well as obviously continue to help your players develop. The other thing here that I would pull on too is, great, having Andy Bradley, the executive director of BBA, on screen. Yes, you want that. Also, this is a great way, though, to engage your entire coaching staff. The picture you see here on the right is a different coach in the organization going through a different set of drills for a different set of kids. Using your coaching staff to your benefit right now, so it's not all on you as the head of an organization or a head coach, but pulling on those resources that you have is a great way to engage your staff so that they are also, staying invested in this and staying engaged through this. It's also a great way to engage your families because while AB might know every single kid in the organization, or he might work with a specific team, what about that 13U team? They want to see their coach too. So just engaging the players and coaches more holistically is something that that we've seen from our network and that we think is a really good opportunity, and using this quite frankly, to your advantage to engage directly with your coaching staff to keep them involved, and also with your players and parents too. The other thing, and this is kind of the elephant in the room, what the last thing for coaches to focus on, and what you guys I think can do, is contingency planning for your summer schedule. It is pretty likely that this summer will not look like what you had planned when you sat down in October, November, December, January, and set out your tournament schedule. It is going to look different. There are going to be reschedulings. There's going to be postponements, cancellations. It's going to be like a summer full of rain, but with a lot more advance notice. So using this time to start setting some contingency plans and thinking through what some of the impacts might be is something that I think, unfortunately, will not likely go to waste. And so two bullet points under this that I would point to based on conversations that I've had with travel coaches and also with some college coaches is for programs that are designed to give recruiting exposure, being efficient this summer is going to be more important than ever. I think that it's always really important for players and coaches and programs to be efficient in what they are doing in terms of the exposure that they're getting. But this summer, where it very easily could turn into a shortened recruiting cycle, it is going to be more important than ever, unfortunately. And so targeting places where you think your kids can get really quality exposure and access to coaches, and not just any coaches, but the right coaches, I think is an area of emphasis that if I were in your shoes, I would start to think through. And in talking with a lot of travel coaches, I know that it is an area where coaches are starting to think through more and more as they start to project out, oh, that early June tournament, that mid-June, that late June maybe, whether or not those look the same way as I expected them to when I first registered for them is kind of up in the air right now. And that's something that I would encourage, kind of thinking through worst case scenarios so that you are prepared just in case is something that we are doing at Head First with all of our camps, quite frankly, and something that I would encourage you guys to do as well. The other side of this is not only access to efficient exposure directly to college coaches, but also one thing that I talked through with Coach Gordon from Duke yesterday is he believes that video and data and analytics will take more of a kind of a priority one role for a lot of programs, because if their spring recruiting is already pretty much clipped, they aren't getting out on the road to see local schools in North Carolina right now because they cannot. They are barred from doing that by the NCAA dead period. If this summer is a shorter recruiting cycle, it's going to be some tight turnaround in terms of seeing a kid, being comfortable with him, committing him, getting that verbal or an LI commitment over the course of the summer, locking in scholarship dollars. They still have to do all that. They're still going to have to recruit a class of 2021, 2022, 2023. They still have to make steps in that direction, but it's going to be on a tighter window for this summer. And so one thing that I talked about with Gordo was having access to analytical tools and more data, things like Blast or Rapsodo or TrackMan Portable or Diamond Kinetics, whatever you might use in your program or see used at other programs. These can help give college recruiters more comfort more quickly, because they're not just relying on the eye test. They're saying, okay, I have the eye test and that checks out. I have this depth of data that can tell me a little bit more about what I'm seeing, so that as I make this decision, it's not just on gut instinct, and so I can make it maybe a little bit quicker. The other thing here is Gordo, Duke, the Duke staff, every coach who's recruiting this summer knows that the first time they see a kid at a Head First event or a Top 96 event or a PG event in June or July or whenever this opens back up, those kids will not have seen live pitching. They will not have played an actual game of baseball in most cases since early March. And so, yes, kids are going to not look great in their first couple at bats when they get back in the field and face live pitching for the first time, or see a fly ball in the blue sky for the first time in a while. But having data to rely back on can give coaches, they say, okay, he didn't look great in that at bat, but let me turn to the Blast data. Let me turn to the Rapsodo data for that pitcher and see, okay, he has the tools, he has the ability, and I think that there's a little bit more wiggle room in terms of what we are hearing from college coaches is that there's more wiggle room when they have the eye test. If somebody doesn't quite check out because they're rusty, quite frankly, but they also have this data and they can start to put some numbers to the strengths that this player might have when he is in proper form, that can really help them get a better picture of players and be comfortable in areas where knowing the potential of this kid and the recruitability and projectability of this kid, rather than just, he did not look good today because he hadn't seen an average high school curveball all year.
I think to your first point there, it's going to be really, really important about efficiency to make sure that the events you're going to this summer are going to be able to highlight these kids, because it has to be fast track. So being able to go to events that have these tools where you can see repetition, where you can use the data, where coaches can be, where these kids can be able to go and shake these coaches' hands, being able to do that all summer long, however long the summer will be. We are hopeful that there's going to be at least a portion of it, but really making sure that those events that you pick for your families are going to be the absolute best fit for them to be able to get seen and get data so coaches can go back and make decisions, pretty quickly in that late summer period.
Next up, and this is also a question that just came in, is the potential real or potential impact for 2020 and 2021 committed student athletes as well. There's all sorts of things that are cascading down from the suspension of the college season at the Division I level, and all of these will have there's kind of a cycle of things that could come about, or may come about, or will come about, depending on what the next steps are from the NCAA. The people that I've talked to say that there's a March 30th Division I council meeting during which NCAA member institutions at the Division I level will start to make some of these decisions. The NCAA, about 2 days after the suspension of all postseason playing of the Division I, II, III, and AI seasons, they came out and said we are looking at eligibility waivers. It said in the language in that writing said all student athletes. That is open to some interpretation, and right now it's up in the air as to whether this will be applied just to seniors, to all student athletes. From what I've been following in some circles, there's the potential that they won't extend these eligibility waivers on a blanket level. So that's kind of the first domino to fall, is who gets these eligibility extensions and how long they last. If you're talking about a freshman, and if the NCAA extends eligibility for one additional year to all kids who are participating in Division I athletics this spring, then you're talking about this is at least a 4-year impact, because that freshman who just finished his freshman year or was in the midst of his freshman year is now going to have a 5th year on the back end. So that entire class will be around for 1 extra year, potentially. If it's just seniors, then it might be a bit of a shorter timeline in terms of the ramifications. But what this starts to impact is the more extensions that are granted for eligibility, it's going to start to impact roster caps. It's going to impact scholarship dollars that are available. So, for example, the next domino to fall in my mind is probably the roster cap waivers. If the NCAA extends eligibility for seniors, what does that mean for the roster? They are capped at 35. Will that still be the case? Are they going to require more freshmen to redshirt, whatever, to keep that number under 35? Or are they going to grant a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year, 4-year waiver on that roster size, where they say, because everybody had an extra year of extended eligibility, it means that we have to go to 40 or 45 for the next handful of years until this kind of all works its way through the system. It's unknown what the NCAA is going to do with this right now. There are different thoughts out there in talking with different Division I, III coaches, et cetera, about what this might look like. But there's nothing decided yet, and it's tough to say exactly what the potential impact to this will be. But there will be an impact depending on how the NCAA decides on these things. Next up is scholarships. Fully funded baseball programs have 11.7 scholarships and 27 counters. They can give 11.7 scholarships to a total of 27 student athletes, and there has to be a minimum of a 25% scholarship. Okay. If I extend eligibility for the 5, let's say, seniors on my team, and 3 of them are on 25% scholarships, does that mean that I only have 10.95 scholarships to give away now, and the rest, is it stretching that 11.7 over the same number of kids, more kids? And am I still only capped at 27 kids who are on scholarship in the program? This also will depend on what sort of waivers and allowances the NCAA makes for eligibility, roster cap, and these things start to roll downhill. And you can kind of see the potential for impact. Now, ultimately, who this most could impact are incoming commits, right? The kids who are already in those programs are, freshmen this year, seniors this year. They are part of that 35, 27, 11.7 window that existed this year. But incoming students and verbal commits could be impacted by this. So for the class of 2020, most of them will have a signed NLI. They'll have a letter of intent that is binding in the NCAA's eyes. And so I think that it's again, this is my instinct, my interpretation. I think that it's probably pretty unlikely that you would see decommits or a huge impact there, because the NCAA does recognize that as a commitment, which is why some of the people that we've talked to have the thought that a 1-year waiver on roster cap is a pretty likely outcome, because some seniors will stick around if they're granted the eligibility. Coaches have already committed X kids in their freshman class. A 1-year waiver to allow for everybody who, in the eyes of the NCAA, is fully committed and legally binding and in for these schools, that seems pretty likely because they recognize them. The class of 2021 verbal commits are in a bit of a tougher spot because the NCAA doesn't recognize or govern verbal commitments. So this could impact what they are, how they are handled in this recruiting process by coaches. Ultimately, one thing that we harp on quite a bit here at Head First is verbal commitments are common practice. They're a great outcome for the right student athlete who's looking at this recruiting process a little bit earlier. They're really, really important, fundamental to the college baseball recruiting process. They're also very dependent on the relationship with the coach. How much do you trust this coach? What is their track record on verbals? Which I'm very happy to say and proud to say that the programs that we work with have virtually across the board a stellar record on verbal commitments. That is not the case nationally. Coaching staff turnover can impact these verbal commits, as they always could, but kind of doubling down on that now. If this is just a 1-year waiver, but on the roster cap, but there are more kids in the program, how do you balance out that incoming class for the first year when you aren't allowed? You're back to the 35-man cap, and you're back to not allowed to go to a 36th guy. That's the class of 2021 if there's only a 1-year waiver. So thinking through that is something that we are doing, but ultimately it depends on what this cascading effect is. And so I would encourage you guys to stay in touch with some of this stuff that is going on as well. Some resources that I would point towards is d1baseball.com. Their Twitter has updates, and then 2 of their writers, Kendall Rogers and Aaron Fitt, definitely have their fingers on the pulse of these things. And so tracking this on social media, tracking the articles that are coming out, I think is a really good way to get a sense of how this is developing. And then the other thing is your target program. So coaches, if there are college programs who you have great relationships with, now's a really good time to pull on some of those relationships and some of that network to get your kids some good information, both for 2021s who are committed and 2021s who are looking. It's going to be important for both of them to have a good picture of what's going on. So having your student athletes follow their target programs on social media, you pulling on resources that you might have in your area or nationally, I think can really help you be a good resource to student athletes who have some of these same questions and have some of the same confusion and uncertainty as they are going through this as well.
And Max, I think what's important out of this, because there's a lot that was just said there, is that there's a lot of unknowns. And I think we're as informed as you guys are, and it's important to really see what's going to come out in the next couple of weeks from the NCAA, from these schools, of what they do. The next point is, and what I'm hearing and what we've talked about even today, is, it's going to depend on the school. I think there's a lot of things that are going to happen over the next couple of weeks, but you're going to also have a lot of schools. So for example, with a lot of the Head First honor roll schools, given they are high academic, there's not going to be as many effects as it may to a school that's filled with, 6 major league prospects that may decide to come back. So there's a lot there that I think is important. And the main thing is, parents are going to have a lot of questions. They're not going to want to sit and read. They're going to want to just have these bullet points of how does it affect my son? That's important. And I think we're going to start to see, as I'm sure you guys as coaches are going to start to see. So being able to give them the relevant information that's really just important for them without all the other fluff that kind of goes around it. So.
Absolutely. And then Matt, do you want to, so we are still planning on running our events as scheduled in 2020. We are keeping tabs on things. Matt, do you want to talk a little about kind of the overview of these programs and the recent changes to our policies and kind of what we're doing with travel coaches to work with them and their families?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to be a resource for you. Obviously, that's the reason why we're here. We feel, and this is a perfect compliment, is to talk about the 2 camps that we run under Head First Showcases. For those that aren't familiar, we do have two different types of camps. We have the Head First Honorable camps, which are the high academic camps that are going to be located in California, New York, and Florida. We also run regionally focused camps called Top 96 Baseball. Those are going to be in markets such as LA, in Atlanta, in Chicago, in Dallas, and Washington, D.C. We feel as though the time, as we had said earlier, the time is now to really pick the right events to make sure that you are getting your student athletes maximum exposure and the right exposure. The camps that we offer, we actually feel are going to be even doubled down upon this summer. And we fully plan on running all the events that we physically can this year. And we feel like these are going to be the right fits for your guys, or certainly for some. So for those kids that do want to go play college ball and they want to look on the high academic realm, the Head First Honorable camps are going to be really key. Whereas the Top 96 camps are going to actually give you a little bit more comfort knowing that they're local camps. So if you're a Virginia-based or DC-based travel organization, you can drive right over to Catholic University. The schools that are going to be there, they're able to drive. So that may be something, especially as you're looking into June and July and even August, that may be a really nice fit for your guys, lower price point. So to that point, and I will send everybody an email after this for those that we aren't currently working with, because I see a lot of our partners on here already, but we do offer some great travel organizational rates that can help lower the cost a little bit for you. So we don't do it for all, but for those that are interested in that, this is the right fit for, we're more than willing to have those conversations. And whether that, might be the Ivy League schools or University of Chicago or Amherst or GW, whatever it is, or it's a little bit more on the regional level where kids want to stay put, we feel like we can touch both of those needs for you with Top 96 and Honor Roll. So that's a little bit more about us. Max, we got you muted there.
Good
there you
flag.
go. Yep.
One thing that we are working with families and travel coaches on right now, given the unique circumstances, is we want families to feel comfortable and not feel any risk in signing up. So we'll be sending this out in the next few days, but we have officialized a policy where if any of our events are canceled, we're going to be giving 100% refunds back to families who sign up, just so that we don't want that to be an obstacle, because as we said, we think that this exposure will be more and more important in this summer more than ever. But we also understand that there's uncertainty, and while we are scheduling right now, or while we are planning on running our full schedule right now, that could change depending on direction from officials, from people who know much more about public health certainly than we do. So we want families to be comfortable with that.
And Max, also, I think right now is it's really tough. It's a tough economic time for everybody. I think there is that uncertainty. So we have options as well to be able to put down $100, $200 to secure a spot, knowing that that can be refundable. So you don't have to come out of pocket with the full freight right away, because we do understand there's other things that are going to take priority, as they are in my life, as they are in Max's life. So I think the point is that we're really, really flexible in terms of what we're able to do, but even more so for our travel partners.
Absolutely. Now, I know that we've gone almost up to the promised hour, but I do want to make sure that we cover any questions that are still out there. So Matt and I are going to stick around as long as we possibly can. If you guys need to hop off, please, don't let us keep you around unless you're, like me and going a little bit stir crazy at home and could use a little bit of webinar interaction. But I want to make sure that we open this up to questions. So again, you can find that question box, type it in there. I know a lot of you have so far, and so we'll kind of start there. But just, fire those questions away and we'll start to answer them. One thing that we talked about, the part that we talked about, sports recruits. So the question is, what does it cost for a sports recruits account for each individual player? Are there organizational or team discounts? So there's, you can sign up and add a sports recruits profile for free. As you might imagine, I am not paying for a sports recruits profile as a 31-year-old. So you can sign up for a free profile, and you have a lot of the functionality that you that you would. They also have different levels of subscription. I think the next one up would be something like $99 a month. And what that unlocks is you're able to directly message college coaches through their platform. So it does add that, which is kind of a nice touch. You also can get a lot of value out of this as an individual student athlete before you get to some of that, as long as you are effectively and responsibly monitoring an inbox, for example. One nice thing about this, the way they have their messaging set up, is that if I were to go to my list of schools and let's say I want to send an email to Amherst, if I click on Amherst and I just click on contact, it will automatically populate with with all the coaching staff's contact information. So it's less time looking up email addresses so that you can spend more time contacting coaches. So it's kind of a nice to have feature there. They also do work directly with travel programs like you guys, with organizations like us, to give kind of team rates. And what I know a lot of programs who work within them do is they'll essentially take that team rate and build it into the cost of their program if they want to. So everybody in McKenna Travel Program has a premium sports recruits account so that they can all have access to these additional tools. And then what it also does is it positions the coach or whoever is granted access, they can keep tabs on some of these things. So parents have access to these sports recruits accounts that they can make sure that kids are staying on top of their messaging or their school research, or liking the schools or updating their profile. So can coaches in these organizations. And we know certainly a lot of programs who work with sports recruits to do that and deliver that value to their families, and a lot of them really like it. So I receive no benefit or commission from it, but I know that some programs that we work with very closely do that. And so I am more than happy to put you in touch with some of their team there. If you want to reach out and have any questions about doing that, just let me know.
Max, I guess we have time for one more, but like I said, we can stick around, and that's a good segue, is specifically about Top 96 and Head First team deals, similar to what you were talking about. So it can look a little bit different. We're more than happy to have those conversations with you, especially with the landscape changing a little bit. We're starting to see a little bit more interaction from travel programs that want to entertain the idea of bringing not necessarily the entire team, but maybe the 5, 6, 7 guys per team that are going to be the right fit. So we'll send plenty of information after this where you can get in touch with either me or Max or other members of our team to be able to have those conversations and take it to the next, take that next step.
Absolutely. And I think that one thing that the real impetus for that travel program that Matt kind of touched on is we want to make sure that we're finding the right kids for our camps. We know that not everybody is looking to go to these sorts of high academic schools. It's a pretty niche audience. And so we want to make sure that for the benefit of the student athletes, but also for the college coaches, that we're getting the right kids on the right field with the right coaches watching, with all the right tools to be able to succeed. And so, you guys are a great resource in terms of helping us identify the kids who can most benefit from these programs and can really deliver value to their college programs as they enter them. So we understand that it is not for everybody, but if there are kids who fit that model, certainly let us know, and we're happy to be in touch with them. The Top 96 being a regional camp, it does open up kind of a different swath of schools, and you see some of the logos down there in the bottom right hand corner. These will have schools like, yes, Emory will be there when we run in Atlanta, but so will Clemson, so will Kennesaw State, so will Oglethorpe. Just very different kind of academic and athletic profiles, all from the region. The mind-blowing number that I researched last year was that 55% of kids go to school within 200 miles of home, and something like 80% go to school within 500 miles of home. There is a huge regional driver to college matriculation, and so this camp is built to serve that sort of kid who is looking to stay close-ish or relatively close to home, certainly as well. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We're going to finish up and answer a handful more questions that have come in, but we're going to do it on chat because they're a little bit more individual. Thank you all for taking the time to listen in, and always feel free to contact Matt, myself, and we're happy to be in touch with you in your program. Thank you.